The morning sun cast long shadows across the private airfield as Amelia Chen pulled her sensible compact car into the executive parking area. She straightened her blazer, grabbed her well-worn leather briefcase stuffed with presentation materials, and checked her watch. 2 hours before the corporate jet was scheduled to depart. Plenty of time. Today was the culmination of 3 years of work. The International Aviation Innovation Summit only happened every 2 years, and being invited to present was a career-defining opportunity. At 34, Amelia had worked her way up from an entry-level position to become one of the most promising aerospace engineers at GlobeTech Aviation. Though you wouldn't know it from how management treated her ideas. She took a deep breath of the jet fuel-scented air and smiled. Vindication was finally within reach. The terminal building was sleek and modern, all glass and polished steel, a stark contrast to the utilitarian hangars that dotted the rest of the airfield. As she pushed through the revolving door, the blast of air conditioning hit her face. Inside, fellow GlobeTech executives in expensive suits clustered in small groups, sipping coffee from real mugs, not paper cups. Amelia nodded politely to a few colleagues she recognized, though most barely acknowledged her. She'd grown used to being overlooked despite her credentials, a PhD from MIT and 6 patents to her name. She headed toward the check-in desk, rolling her small carry-on behind her. "Good morning," she said to the attendant, sliding her company ID and passport across the counter. "Amelia Chen, for the Geneva flight." The attendant's smile faltered as she typed on her keyboard. "One moment, please." She picked up a phone, turning slightly away as she spoke in hushed tones. Amelia felt a flutter of unease. She double-checked her phone. Yes, there was the email confirming her spot on the flight sent just yesterday by her department head. 2 minutes later, Howard Phillips appeared. As Vice President of Research and Development, Phillips rarely bothered with engineers at Amelia's level. His forced smile didn't reach his eyes. "Amelia, didn't expect to see you here this morning." His voice was jovial but tight. "I'm on the passenger list for Geneva," she replied, keeping her tone even. "The summit starts tomorrow." Phillips glanced at the 2 senior executives waiting by the private security checkpoint. They were watching with unconcealed interest. "There seems to be a misunderstanding," Phillips said, lowering his voice. "The jet's at capacity with our leadership team and key clients. We've arranged for you to take the commercial flight this afternoon. You'll still make it in time for your presentation tomorrow." Amelia's chest tightened. "My confirmation email specifically mentioned the corporate jet." "I've been planning around this schedule for weeks." Phillips shrugged with practiced sympathy. "Last-minute changes happen. Protocol, you understand. The commercial ticket should be in your inbox already." Protocol. That familiar excuse. Amelia had heard it dozens of times over the years, always when something she'd been promised mysteriously fell through. "The commercial flight lands barely 4 hours before my presentation slot," she said, fighting to keep frustration from her voice. "That's not enough time if there are any delays." "You'll be fine," Phillips said dismissively. "Now, if you'll excuse me, we're boarding soon." As he walked away, Amelia stood frozen, the weight of realization settling on her shoulders. This wasn't a mistake. 6 months ago, she had presented her groundbreaking fuel efficiency design to the executive board. They had smiled politely, thanked her for her enthusiasm, and promptly shelved the project, claiming it was too experimental and not aligned with current market demands. Last week, rumors had started circulating that Aerodyne Systems, their biggest competitor, was about to announce a major breakthrough in fuel efficiency technology. Suddenly, GlobeTech executives were scrambling to understand how they'd been beaten to the punch. What they didn't know, what Amelia hadn't told them, was that her design had been validated by independent testing. The model she'd constructed in her own time, using her own resources, had shown a 22% efficiency improvement over current standards. If her suspicions were correct, Aerodyne's announcement would mirror her own research uncannily. She watched as Phillips joined the group of executives. They laughed at something he said, their backs turned to her. They had no idea what was at stake. Her presentation at the summit wasn't just another technical talk, it was proof that GlobeTech had the solution all along, but had failed to recognize it. Amelia moved to a quiet corner of the terminal and pulled out her phone. The commercial flight confirmation was indeed in her inbox, scheduled to depart at 3:40 p.m. It would be cutting it dangerously close. One delay, one cancellation, and she'd miss her chance entirely. Just as she was calculating alternate routes, her phone buzzed with a text from Li Wei, her former college roommate who now worked for the Air Force Research Laboratory. "Still on for lunch next week? Can't wait to catch up." Amelia stared at the message, an idea forming. Li had mentioned something about a military transport heading to Europe this week during their last call. She quickly typed, "Any chance that transport to Geneva is today?" "Hit a snag with my travel plans." 3 agonizing minutes passed before the reply came. "Leaving at 11. Can get you on if you're at the military side of the airfield by 10:30. Calling in all my favors for this one." Relief and determination flooded through Amelia. She glanced at her watch. 9:15 a.m. Enough time. As she headed for the exit, she passed the large windows overlooking the tarmac where the sleek Globetech corporate jet waited. Through the glass, she could see the executives being escorted across the tarmac, their polished shoes gleaming in the morning sun. They moved with the easy confidence of people who had never had doors closed in their faces. Amelia straightened her shoulders and pushed through the exit. The jet they tried to keep her off was no longer her concern. What happened next would change everything, not just for her but for the entire industry. The taxi ride to the military side of the airport took 20 minutes. As they approached the security checkpoint, Amelia saw Li waiting, her Air Force uniform crisp despite the rising heat of the day. "You're cutting it close," Li said with a grin as Amelia paid the driver. "What happened to the fancy corporate jet?" "Apparently I wasn't important enough," Amelia replied, giving her old friend a quick hug. "Thank you for this. I owe you big time." "Just promise me front row seats when you revolutionize aviation," Li said, leading her through security. "The transport isn't exactly first class, but it'll get you there." The contrast between the military hangar and the corporate terminal couldn't have been more striking. Here everything was functional, no nonsense. Personnel moved with purpose, loading equipment and checking systems. "Who else is on this flight?" Amelia asked as they walked across the concrete toward a massive C-17 transport plane. "Mostly equipment and a few officers heading to the NATO base outside Geneva," Li explained. "And one interesting passenger you might want to talk to. Retired General Robert Thompson." Amelia nearly stopped in her tracks. "Robert Thompson? The Robert Thompson who now sits on Aerodyne's board of directors?" Li's smile turned mischievous. "The very same. Fascinating coincidence, isn't it?" It wasn't a coincidence, and they both knew it. Li had always been 3 steps ahead, even in college. "You planned this," Amelia said, her mind racing with possibilities. "Let's just say I heard some things about Aerodyne's big announcement and connected a few dots," Li replied. "Thompson respects brilliant minds. The 4-hour flight gives you plenty of time to make an impression." As they approached the massive aircraft, Amelia saw an older man in civilian clothes speaking with the flight crew. Even without the uniform, General Thompson's military bearing was unmistakable. "Your boarding pass, Ms. Chen," Li said, handing her a clearance badge. "Sometimes getting pushed off one flight is the best thing that could happen to you." Amelia clipped the badge to her blazer, a surge of confidence replacing her earlier frustration. The corporate executives had tried to sideline her, thinking they were protecting their territory. They had no idea that in doing so, they had accidentally set in motion events that would transform the industry. As she climbed the steep ramp into the cavernous interior of the military transport, Amelia couldn't help but smile at the irony. The very people who tried to keep her off their jet had just handed her the opportunity of a lifetime. What happened next would stun them all. The interior of the military transport plane was a stark contrast to the plush corporate jet Amelia had expected to board that morning. Instead of leather seats and champagne, there were canvas benches along the walls and cargo strapped down in the center. The noise was deafening compared to a commercial flight, a constant rumble that vibrated through her bones. But Amelia didn't mind. She sat with her back straight, briefcase clutched on her lap, watching as General Robert Thompson made his way toward her. He moved with the deliberate confidence of someone who had spent decades making life-or-death decisions. "You must be the engineer Li mentioned," he said, settling onto the bench beside her. His voice carried easily over the engine noise, practiced at giving commands in challenging conditions. "Robert Thompson, Amelia Chen," she replied, extending her hand. His handshake was firm but not overpowering. Thank you for allowing me to join this flight, sir. No need for sir anymore. Those days are behind me. He smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling with well-earned wrinkles. Lee says you're presenting at the summit tomorrow. What's your field? As the massive C-17 taxied down the runway, Amelia gave him the simplified version of her work, watching his expression carefully. Most people's eyes glazed over within 30 seconds of her explaining fuel efficiency algorithms. Thompson, however, asked pointed questions that revealed he understood exactly what she was talking about. So your design increases efficiency by how much? He asked as the plane lifted off the ground with a powerful surge. 22% in controlled testing, Amelia replied. With potential for more as the technology matures. Thompson's eyebrows rose slightly. That's remarkably close to what Aerodyne is rumored to be announcing. Amelia met his gaze steadily. Is it? How interesting. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device, switching it on. A faint hum filled the air between them. Signal disruptor, he explained. Old habits. Now we can speak freely without concern for corporate interests. Tell me, Ms. Chen, how long has GlobeTech been sitting on your design? The directness of the question took her by surprise, but Amelia decided honesty was her best approach. 6 months, officially. I've been developing it for 3 years, but the executive board formally reviewed and rejected it 2 quarters ago. And now Aerodyne happens to have a similar breakthrough. Thompson wasn't asking a question. I didn't share my research with competitors. If that's what you're implying, Amelia said firmly. Thompson chuckled. I wasn't implying anything of the sort. Great minds often reach similar conclusions independently. What interests me is why GlobeTech would sideline such promising technology. Amelia hesitated, then decided to take a risk. The project lead who rejected it has a competing design. Less efficient, but more aligned with the company's existing patents. The not invented here syndrome. Combined with a dash of self-interest. Thompson nodded knowingly. And today? Why aren't you on that corporate jet? Last-minute protocol issues, Amelia said, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. Protocol, Thompson repeated with a short laugh. The refuge of the bureaucrat. The plane hit some turbulence and they both grabbed the safety straps. When the bumping subsided, Thompson leaned closer. Let me tell you something about the aviation industry, Ms. Chen. For all our talk of innovation and forward thinking, we're terrified of real change. The old guard, and I count myself among them, built our careers on incremental improvements to established technologies. He gestured around the cargo hold. This very plane uses engine principles that haven't fundamentally changed in 50 years. We polish them, tweak them, make them marginally better each year. But revolutionary change? That terrifies the boardroom. So why join Aerodyne's board? They're announcing exactly that kind of change, Amelia pointed out. Thompson smiled. Because I'm old enough to recognize which way the wind is blowing. And because not everyone in this industry is afraid of the future. He paused, studying her. Though I'm curious how you know about Aerodyne's announcement. It's been kept quite secret. Industry rumors, Amelia said carefully. And the timing of the summit? It's the perfect venue for a major announcement. Indeed. Thompson seemed amused. And convenient that you're presenting in the same session. Almost as if someone wanted to create a direct comparison. Amelia had wondered about that herself. Her presentation slot had been changed 3 times in the past week, finally landing just before Aerodyne's keynote. An Air Force officer approached them, handing Thompson a folder. The briefing you requested, sir. As Thompson flipped through the documents, Amelia took the opportunity to gather her thoughts. This conversation was heading into dangerous territory. If Thompson was fishing for industrial secrets, she needed to be careful. But when he looked up, his expression was open. Tell me something, Ms. Chen. Do you believe GlobeTech values your contributions? The question hit closer to home than he could know. 3 years of ignored suggestions, meetings where her ideas were attributed to male colleagues, project leads taking credit for her work, all while the company proudly featured her in diversity reports and recruitment materials. I believe GlobeTech values what I represent, more than what I create, she said finally. Thompson nodded slowly. That's a problem across the industry. We hire brilliant minds, then ignore them because they don't look or sound like the engineers who built the industry 50 years ago. He closed the folder. It's why we're being left behind by tech firms and startups. They care about ideas, not pedigrees. The conversation shifted to Thompson's experiences in the industry. He shared stories of promising innovations that died in committee. Brilliant engineers whose careers stalled because they didn't fit the expected mold. Amelia found herself opening up about her own struggles, the constant battle to be taken seriously. "You know," Thompson said after a particularly frustrating story about a project manager who had dismissed her safety concerns, only to have them proven right months later, "Aerodyne has been actively recruiting engineers with your specific skill set. Is that so?" Amelia tried to keep her tone casual. "We've found that diversity of thought leads to better solutions, revolutionary ones even." He handed her a business card. "The summit will be interesting tomorrow. Whatever happens, I'd like to continue this conversation afterward." Before Amelia could respond, the pilot announced they were beginning their descent into Geneva. Thompson secured a seatbelt and changed the subject to the beautiful approach over Lake Geneva. But the implication hung in the air between them. When they landed, Thompson helped her navigate the military clearance process and arranged for a car to take her to her hotel. "Until tomorrow, Ms. Chen," he said as they parted ways outside the terminal. "I suspect it will be a day many people remember for a very long time." The drive to her hotel gave Amelia time to process the conversation. Thompson had all but offered her a job, even knowing she might have developed the very technology Aerodyne was about to announce. And he'd made it clear that their company culture would value her contributions in ways Globetech never had. As the car pulled up to the hotel, her phone buzzed with a text from Phillips. "Heard you found alternative transportation. Impressive resourcefulness. Breakfast meeting 7 a.m. hotel restaurant to review presentation guidelines." Guidelines, another way of saying restrictions. Amelia texted back a simple "confirmed" and stepped out of the car. The hotel lobby was buzzing with aviation industry professionals from around the world. Amelia spotted several Globetech executives at the bar, laughing loudly. None of them noticed her as she checked in and headed to the elevator. In her room, Amelia unpacked her presentation materials and spread them across the bed. Her original design was brilliant in its elegance. She knew that without false modesty. But now she faced a choice: present the watered-down version Globetech had approved, or show the full potential of her work. She thought about Thompson's words about revolutionary change and diversity of thought. She thought about years of having her ideas dismissed, only to see similar concepts celebrated when presented by others. With sudden clarity, Amelia began reworking her presentation slides. By the time she finished, the sun had set over Lake Geneva, casting the room in darkness except for the glow of her laptop screen. Tomorrow would change everything, not just for her career, but for the entire industry, and the executives who had tried to keep her off their jet would be sitting in the front row, about to get the surprise of their lives. The hotel restaurant buzzed with morning conversations as industry leaders from around the world discussed predictions for the day's presentations. Amelia arrived at exactly 7 a.m., spotting Phillips and two other Globetech executives at a corner table. They hadn't noticed her yet, too busy laughing over something on Phillips's phone. Amelia took a deep breath, straightened her navy blazer, and approached the table with confidence she didn't entirely feel. Her revised presentation slides were safely loaded on both her laptop and a backup thumb drive in her pocket. A sleepless night had left her eyes slightly red, but her mind was sharper than ever. "Good morning, gentlemen," she said, pulling out the empty chair. Phillips looked up, his surprise poorly concealed. "Amelia, you made it after all. Did you doubt I would?" She smiled pleasantly as she sat down. "The commercial flight was delayed by 3 hours," said Denton, the company's chief marketing officer. "We assumed you'd missed the meeting, so that's why they'd booked her on that particular flight." Another coincidence that would have kept her from presenting altogether. "Fortunately, I found alternate transportation," Amelia said, pouring herself coffee from the carafe on the table. "A military transport plane, actually. Quite the experience." The third man, Vaughn from legal, raised an eyebrow. "Military transport? How did you manage that?" "Old college friend," Amelia said casually. "She works for the Air Force Research Laboratory now." Small world. She didn't mention General Thompson. Let them think her alternative transportation was just lucky timing, rather than a potential career-changing connection. Phillips cleared his throat. "Well, about today's presentation, we've made some adjustments to the company messaging." He slid a tablet across the table. On it was a document titled Presentation Guidelines Confidential. Amelia scanned it quickly, her heart sinking. The new guidelines effectively gutted her presentation, removing any mention of specific efficiency numbers or technological details. What remained was corporate fluff about commitment to innovation and future-focused development. "These changes remove everything substantive from my presentation," she said. Keeping her voice steady, Denton leaned forward. "We've received intelligence that Aerodyne is announcing a major breakthrough today. We can't risk putting specific technical details out there until we understand their approach. Or," Amelia said carefully, "you don't want it to be obvious that I developed something similar months ago and the company ignored it." An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Phillips recovered first. "That's not it at all. This is about protecting intellectual property and market positioning." "Of course," Amelia said, her tone making it clear she didn't believe him for a second. "And what happens when Aerodyne announces technology remarkably similar to what I proposed 6 months ago?" Vaughn from legal spoke up. "Our position is that any similar technology developed during your employment belongs to GlobeTech, regardless of whether it was formally adopted." There it was. They were worried about looking foolish for rejecting her innovation, but still wanted to claim ownership if needed. "I understand completely," Amelia said, standing up. "If you'll excuse me, I need to prepare for my presentation." "You'll follow the new guidelines?" Phillips asked, his tone making it more demand than question. Amelia gave him a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'll represent GlobeTech appropriately." As she walked away, she heard Denton mutter something about damage control. They were scared. And they should be. The conference hall was packed by the time Amelia's session began. Interest had been building about Aerodyne's announcement, scheduled immediately after her presentation. Many attendees had likely shown up early just to get good seats for the big reveal. Amelia waited in the wings as the session moderator introduced her. From her position, she could see the GlobeTech executives in the front row, Phillips nervously checking his watch. 3 rows back sat General Thompson, looking perfectly at ease beside several Aerodyne representatives. "It is my pleasure to introduce our next speaker," the moderator was saying. "Amelia Chen is a senior aerospace engineer with GlobeTech Aviation, specializing in propulsion efficiency systems. Her work in computational fluid dynamics has led to several patents and innovations in the field. Please welcome Amelia Chen." The applause was polite but distracted as Amelia took the stage. She connected her laptop to the presentation system and took a moment to look out at the audience. Hundreds of industry professionals, many already dismissing her as the warm-up act before Aerodyne's big moment. "Thank you for that introduction," Amelia began, her voice stronger than she expected. "Before I start, I'd like to ask a question. How many of you believe we've reached the practical limits of fuel efficiency in commercial aviation?" About half the hands in the audience went up. "That's what I thought too until 3 years ago," she continued. "We've been taught that significant gains are impossible without completely rethinking engine design or finding miracle materials. But what if we've been looking at the problem backwards?" She clicked to her first slide. Not the corporate-approved opening about GlobeTech's history of innovation, but a complex diagram of her alternative approach. In the front row, Phillips sat up straighter, his face darkening. Beside him, Vaughn was already typing furiously on his phone. "Instead of trying to extract more energy from fuel, what if we focus on minimizing energy waste in the current system?" Amelia continued, warming to her subject. "My team identified 5 key points in the standard turbofan engine where energy is consistently lost." She hadn't been given a team, of course. She'd done this work alone, after hours and on weekends. But the small lie gave GlobeTech plausible deniability if they chose to take credit for her work. For the next 15 minutes, Amelia walked through her innovation in detail, explaining the computational models, material requirements, and projected efficiency gains. She showed test results, leaving out that she'd paid for testing, with her own savings and simulation data demonstrating the 22% efficiency improvement. The room had gone from politely distracted to completely focused. Questions came rapid-fire during her explanation, and Amelia answered each one with confidence and precision. "In summary," she said, approaching her conclusion, "this technology could be implemented in existing engine designs with minimal retooling. The efficiency gains would reduce fuel costs by approximately 20%, while cutting carbon emissions by even more. And unlike some theoretical approaches, this can be done with materials and manufacturing techniques that exist today. The applause that followed was enthusiastic and genuine. Even some of the Aerodyne representatives were nodding appreciatively. Phillips, however, looked like he might explode. His face flushed as he glared at her. The moderator stepped back to the microphone. "Thank you for that fascinating presentation, Ms. Chen. We have time for a few questions from the audience." Hands shot up throughout the hall. The moderator pointed to a woman in the middle section. "This technology seems ready for implementation," the woman said. "Why isn't Globetech already incorporating it into your latest engine models?" Phillips half rose from his seat, clearly ready to intercept the question, but Amelia answered smoothly. "Innovation takes time to validate and integrate into existing systems. Globetech is currently evaluating the most effective implementation strategy." The diplomatic non-answer made Phillips slowly sit back down, though his expression remained thunderous. 3 more technical questions followed, which Amelia handled with expertise. Then the moderator pointed to a man near the back. "The efficiency numbers you're claiming are remarkably similar to what Aerodyne has been hinting at in their promotional materials for this conference. Is this a case of parallel development or something else?" A murmur ran through the crowd. Amelia noticed General Thompson leaning forward slightly, watching her response with interest. "Great minds often reach similar conclusions when examining the same problem," Amelia said carefully. "I've been working on this approach for 3 years with formal documentation dating back at least that far. Beyond that, I can't comment on Aerodyne's development process." The moderator, sensing the tension, quickly moved to wrap up. "Thank you again, Ms. Chen. And now we'll take a brief 5-minute break before our next presentation from Aerodyne Systems." As Amelia gathered her materials, Phillips practically lunged onto the stage, followed by the other executives. "What the hell was that?" he hissed, keeping his voice low to avoid being overheard by the audience members still milling about. "You completely ignored the guidelines." "I presented my work accurately," Amelia replied calmly. "Isn't that what Globetech sent me here to do?" "You've put us in an impossible position," Denton said. "If Aerodyne's announcement matches your claims, it looks like we stole their technology. If it doesn't, you've oversold capabilities we don't have." Amelia shouldered her bag. "Or maybe it will look like Globetech has had this breakthrough technology for months and failed to recognize its value." Before they could respond, a voice called from behind them. "Excellent presentation, Ms. Chen." They turned to find General Thompson approaching, accompanied by a tall woman Amelia recognized as Aerodyne's Chief Technology Officer. "Thank you." "General," Amelia said. Phillips stepped forward, hand extended. "Howard Phillips, VP of Research and Development at Globetech. We're very proud of Amelia's work." "Are you?" Thompson asked mildly. "That's not the impression I got when she was denied a seat on your corporate jet yesterday." Phillips froze, hand still outstretched. The Aerodyne CTO raised an eyebrow. "Ms. Chen," the CTO said, "I'd be very interested in discussing your approach further. Perhaps after our presentation?" "I look forward to it," Amelia replied, unable to keep a small smile from her face. As the Aerodyne representatives walked away, Phillips turned to her, his voice low and dangerous. "This isn't over. We'll discuss your future at Globetech after this session." Amelia nodded calmly. "Yes, I believe we will." She took a seat in the audience, far from the Globetech section, as Aerodyne prepared to take the stage. Whatever happened next would change everything, for the industry, for Globetech, and especially for Amelia herself. The conference hall fell silent as Aerodyne's Chief Technology Officer, Dr. Vivian Zhao, took the stage. The anticipation in the room was almost physical. Hundreds of industry professionals leaning forward in their seats, recording devices ready, notepads open. Amelia sat halfway back, heart pounding. Whatever happened in the next 30 minutes would determine her future. "Good morning," Dr. Zhao began, her voice confident and measured. "For decades, the aviation industry has accepted certain limitations as unchangeable facts. One of these supposed facts is that significant fuel efficiency gains are impossible without completely redesigning aircraft engines." Amelia felt a chill run down her spine. Zhao had opened with almost the exact same concept she had just presented. "Today, Aerodyne Systems is proud to announce that we have shattered that limitation." Slides appeared on the massive screen, showing diagrams that made Amelia's breath catch. The approach was unmistakably similar to hers. focusing on the same 5 energy loss points, using comparable materials and techniques. Across the room, the GlobeTech executives were huddled together, whispering frantically. Phillips kept shooting accusing glances in her direction. Our breakthrough technology delivers a 24% increase in fuel efficiency using existing engine designs with minimal modifications, Dr. Zhao continued. This isn't theoretical. We've already completed extensive testing and are preparing for commercial implementation. 24%. 2 percentage points higher than what Amelia had claimed. She jotted notes furiously, identifying the minor differences between their approaches. Aerodyne had made a few refinements to the cooling system that she hadn't considered. Elegant solutions that she immediately recognized would improve performance. But the core innovation, the fundamental approach, it was undeniably the same as what she had developed. As Dr. Zhao moved through her presentation, the similarities became impossible to ignore. Murmurs spread through the audience. People who had just watched Amelia's presentation were making the same connections she was. When the presentation ended and the moderator called for questions, the first one came from a reporter with Aviation Weekly. Dr. Zhao, your technology seems remarkably similar to what Ms. Chen from GlobeTech just presented. Can you address the timing of these parallel developments? Dr. Zhao glanced briefly at Amelia, then at General Thompson before answering. Great innovations often emerge simultaneously when the time is right. Aerodyne has been developing this technology for over 2 years, with well-documented research stages. I can't speak to GlobeTech's development timeline. Another question followed immediately. Will there be patent disputes between your companies given the similarities? Before Dr. Zhao could answer, Howard Phillips stood up. GlobeTech fully supports innovation across the industry, he said loudly, his corporate smile firmly in place. We're pleased to see Aerodyne's work aligns with our own research directions. As Ms. Chen mentioned in her presentation, her work represents ongoing exploration rather than finalized technology. The blatant attempt to minimize her presentation made Amelia's cheeks burn. He was already trying to rewrite history, pretending she had presented a vague concept rather than a fully realized innovation. The questions continued for another 10 minutes. Many focused on the remarkable coincidence of 2 companies presenting nearly identical breakthroughs. Through it all, Dr. Zhao remained professional, never directly accusing GlobeTech of anything improper, while subtly emphasizing Aerodyne's documentation and testing timeline. As the session ended and people began filing out for the lunch break, Amelia found herself surrounded by curious attendees asking detailed technical questions. She answered each one professionally, aware that Phillips and the other executives were watching from across the room. Ms. Chen. General Thompson appeared at her side, along with Dr. Zhao. Would you join us for lunch? We have a private room reserved. Phillips immediately moved to intercept them. I'm afraid Ms. Chen has a company debriefing scheduled. Perhaps another time. Actually, Amelia said calmly, I believe I'll accept General Thompson's invitation. Our debriefing can wait until after lunch. Phillips's forced smile didn't reach his eyes. This isn't optional, Amelia. We need to discuss your presentation immediately. What you need, General Thompson said quietly, is to avoid a public scene that would make excellent fodder for the industry press. 3 reporters are watching this conversation right now. Phillips glanced around, noticing the journalists pretending not to eavesdrop nearby. His jaw tightened. Fine, 1 hour. We'll meet in the hotel lobby at 2 p.m. sharp. He turned and stalked away, the other GlobeTech executives trailing behind him. Dr. Zhao smiled. Shall we? The private dining room overlooked Lake Geneva, though no one was paying attention to the spectacular view. Seated around the table were General Thompson, Dr. Zhao, and 3 other Aerodyne executives. Across from them sat Amelia, feeling like she was at a job interview rather than a lunch. Let's be direct, Dr. Zhao said after the waiter had taken their orders and left. Your technology and ours are clearly derived from the same fundamental approach. The question is who developed it first and how 2 separate teams reached identical conclusions. Amelia met her gaze steadily. I began working on this concept 3 years ago. I have dated notebooks, computational models, and prototype designs to prove it. I formally presented it to GlobeTech's executive board 6 months ago, where it was rejected as too experimental and not aligned with current priorities. And you didn't share your work with anyone outside GlobeTech? No. I respected my confidentiality agreements even when my work was shelved. General Thompson leaned forward. And when did Aerodyne begin developing its version? Dr. Zhao hesitated, then nodded. We started focused research approximately 18 months ago, based on theoretical work by Dr. Toshiro Yamamoto. The name hit Amelia like a physical blow. Dr. Yamamoto was my doctoral advisor at MIT. A moment of silence fell over the table as everyone processed the connection. He never mentioned your specific work, Dr. Zhao said quickly. But he published a theoretical paper 2 years ago about rethinking energy loss in turbofan engines. Our research team built on his principles. Amelia nodded slowly. My dissertation explored similar principles, though I took it in a different direction than his published work. So, General Thompson said, we have two brilliant minds, influenced by the same mentor, independently developing similar solutions to the same problem. While one company embraced the innovation, the other rejected it. The implication hung in the air. Aerodyne had recognized the potential that GlobeTech had missed. Ms. Chen, Dr. Zhao said, would you be interested in showing us your original research notes? We're not asking for GlobeTech proprietary information, just your initial concept work that predates your employment there. I have digital copies with me, Amelia said. But why? Because, one of the other executives spoke up. If your initial concept truly predates both GlobeTech's involvement and our own research, you might have a priority claim regardless of employer. Amelia's heart raced. Are you suggesting? We're suggesting, General Thompson said, that Aerodyne values innovation and the people behind it. We're also suggesting that GlobeTech's behavior, rejecting your work, then trying to claim ownership when it proved valuable, raises ethical and possibly legal questions. Dr. Zhao slid a folder across the table. We'd like to make you an offer, Ms. Chen, a senior position with our research team focused on further developing this technology. Amelia opened the folder. The compensation package inside made her eyes widen. It was more than double her current salary, plus stock options and research budget. This is very generous, she said carefully, but I'm still under contract with GlobeTech. Our legal team believes your position is stronger than you might think, said another executive, especially given how they've treated your intellectual contribution. Before Amelia could respond, her phone buzzed with a news alert. She glanced down and nearly dropped the device. GlobeTech stock is falling, she said, showing them the screen. Down 8% already and still dropping. General Thompson checked his own phone. News of the similar presentations is spreading. Investors are speculating about patent disputes and technology theft. Dr. Zhao looked concerned. We never intended to suggest GlobeTech stole our technology. No, Amelia said quietly. But they're afraid everyone will think they had the technology all along and failed to recognize its value, which is exactly what happened. Her phone rang, Phillips calling. She declined the call. Seconds later, a text message, and where are you? Emergency board meeting in 30 minutes. Your presence required. Another notification appeared. An email from GlobeTech's CEO requesting her immediate return to the conference hotel. It seems my lunch break is over, Amelia said, showing them the messages. General Thompson nodded. Before you go, our offer stands. Think it over. We believe your work deserves recognition and support. Amelia gathered her things, her mind racing. Thank you for lunch. And the opportunity. As she left the restaurant, she saw news vans pulling up outside the conference center. Reporters were already doing live broadcasts, speculating about the remarkably similar presentations and what they meant for the industry. By the time she reached the hotel lobby, Phillips was pacing frantically. When he spotted her, he rushed over. Where have you been? The board is on video conference waiting for you. The stock has dropped 12% in the last hour. I was having lunch with Aerodyne, as I mentioned, Amelia said calmly. Phillips grabbed her arm. This is no time for your games. We need damage control immediately. Amelia pulled her arm free. Don't touch me. And don't pretend this is my fault. Your board had my technology 6 months ago and chose to ignore it. That's not how the board remembers it, he hissed. They're saying your presentation was preliminary, that you never provided complete technical specifications. Then they're lying, Amelia said, loud enough that several nearby conference attendees turned to look. I have every email, every presentation slide, every rejection notice. Documented and backed up. Phillips paled. Let's continue this discussion privately. As they headed toward the elevators, Amelia spotted General Thompson watching from across the lobby. He gave her a small nod of encouragement. Whatever happened in the next few hours would determine not just her future, but potentially the direction of the entire industry. The executives who had tried to keep her off their jet were about to discover just how costly that mistake had been. 6 months later, Amelia stood at the window of her new office, watching engineers test a prototype engine in the courtyard below. The Aerodyne Research Campus sprawled across 30 acres of California coastline, a far cry from the cramped cubicle she'd occupied at GlobeTech. Her phone buzzed with a message from Dr. Zhao. Board approved the additional funding. Full-scale production starting next month, Amelia smiled. In just half a year, they had refined the technology beyond even her original expectations. Efficiency gains now approached 27%, and airlines were lining up with pre-orders. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Her assistant poked his head in. Your 2 o'clock is here. And you asked me to remind you about the university lecture tomorrow. Thanks. Raj, send them in. Amelia moved to her desk as General Thompson entered, accompanied by a young woman carrying a laptop. Good to see you, Robert, Amelia said, shaking his hand. Though technically retired, Thompson had become her mentor at Aerodyne, helping her navigate corporate politics and industry relationships. Amelia, he said warmly, this is Yasmin Patel from the Journal of Aerospace Innovation. She's doing that piece on industry transformation we discussed. Amelia welcomed the journalist, offering her a seat. I understand you want to talk about the Chen effect. I still can't believe people are calling it that. Yasmin laughed. When a single presentation triggers the biggest industry shakeup in decades, people need a name for it. Mind if I record? Amelia nodded, and Yasmin placed her recorder on the desk. Let's start with the day itself, Yasmin began. You were originally supposed to travel on GlobeTech's corporate jet to Geneva, but they denied you boarding at the last minute. What happened after that? Amelia leaned back, remembering that pivotal day. I found another way to get there. A military transport plane, actually. That's where I first met General Thompson, who was on Aerodyne's board at the time. A lucky coincidence? I don't believe in coincidences anymore, Amelia said. Just opportunities disguised as obstacles. And the emergency board meeting after your presentation? There are a lot of rumors about what happened there. Amelia exchanged glances with Thompson. Those chaotic hours remained vivid in her memory. 6 months earlier, Amelia had stood before 12 angry faces on a video screen, the GlobeTech board members glaring at her from their various offices around the world. In the hotel conference room with her, Phillips paced nervously while the company's CEO, Douglas Werner, sat stone-faced beside the corporate legal counsel. Ms. Chen, began the board chairwoman, explain to us why you presented proprietary technology without proper clearance, causing our stock to drop 15% in 3 hours. I presented my own work, Amelia replied calmly, which I formally submitted to this board 6 months ago. I have the rejection notice signed by Mr. Werner himself. Werner shifted uncomfortably. The board rejected a preliminary concept, not the fully developed technology you presented today. That's not true, Amelia said, opening her laptop. I've forwarded everyone the complete proposal from 6 months ago, including technical specifications identical to what I presented today. You'll also find the email chain where I was told my approach was too experimental and resources would be allocated to Mr. Phillips' competing project. Instead, a heavy silence fell over the room as board members began reading through their emails. This is highly irregular, the chairwoman finally said. We need to understand how Aerodyne developed nearly identical technology. They didn't steal it, if that's what you're suggesting, Amelia said. We reached similar conclusions independently. The difference is they recognized the value of the innovation. You didn't. That's quite an accusation, Werner snapped. Phillips jumped in. The real issue here is loyalty. Ms. Chen clearly met with Aerodyne representatives and, after my presentation, Amelia cut in. And only because you denied me a seat on the corporate jet, forcing me to find alternative transportation. A seat you weren't entitled to, Phillips said dismissively. Amelia turned to face him directly. Let's be honest about what happened. You deliberately booked me on a commercial flight you knew would be delayed, hoping I'd miss my presentation slot entirely. When that failed, you tried to force me to present a watered-down version that hid the innovation's true potential. Why? Because you knew if the board saw what they'd rejected, there would be consequences. Phillips's face reddened. That's absurd, is it? Amelia turned back to the video screen. Board members, check your email again. I've just forwarded the original flight manifests, showing I was confirmed on the corporate jet 3 weeks ago, then removed yesterday morning on Mr. Phillips's direct order. Another uncomfortable silence as the documents were reviewed. Mr. Phillips, the chairwoman said coldly, is this accurate? Phillips sputtered. There were capacity issues. Priority protocols. The jet has 12 seats, Amelia said. There were 9 passengers. The protocol was making sure I couldn't present work that would make certain people look bad. The board chairwoman's face hardened. Ms. Chen, could you step outside for a few minutes? We need to discuss this privately. Amelia nodded and left the room. In the hallway, she checked her phone. 3 missed calls from Dr. Zhao and a text message. Offer increased. Call when you can. 20 minutes later, Werner emerged, his expression unreadable. The board would like to continue this discussion tomorrow. In the meantime, you're instructed not to speak with anyone about GlobeTech technology or today's events. Amelia met his gaze. I'll be speaking with my lawyer this evening. Werner blinked in surprise. That won't be necessary. This is a simple internal matter. Is it? Because Aerodyne has offered me a position and I'm considering it. You're under contract, Werner said sharply. Non-compete clauses, confidentiality agreements, all of which have exceptions for intellectual property developed prior to employment and presented to the company but rejected. Amelia countered. My lawyer can explain the details. She walked away, feeling lighter than she had in years. Back in her Aerodyne office, Amelia finished recounting a sanitized version of the story to Yasmin. GlobeTech issued a statement the next day that you had resigned to pursue other opportunities, the journalist noted. Within a week, 3 senior executives had also left the company, including Phillips, General Thompson added. Turns out he'd been suppressing innovations from multiple teams, not just Amelia's. And the stock price? Yasmin asked. GlobeTech lost 40% of its value in the month following the conference, Amelia said. They've since restructured their R&D department and implemented new evaluation protocols for innovations. Ironically, they now call it the Chen process. Yasmin smiled. Which brings me to the industry changes. In the 6 months since your presentation, we've seen 4 major aerospace companies reorganize their innovation pipelines and promote diverse talent into leadership positions. People are calling it a long overdue reckoning. The technology was the catalyst, Amelia acknowledged, but the real story is about whose ideas get heard and whose get ignored. How many innovations have we missed because the wrong person proposed them, or because they weren't on the right jet? Yasmin suggested. Amelia laughed. Exactly. After the interview concluded and Yasmin left, General Thompson lingered. The museum called again, he said. They're quite persistent about acquiring that jet for their exhibit. Amelia shook her head, amused. The Aviation Innovation Museum had been trying to secure GlobeTech's corporate jet for their new exhibit on industry transformation. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Have they asked GlobeTech directly? She asked. They have. Apparently the new CEO is considering it. Good publicity to show they've learned their lesson. Amelia walked back to the window, watching the test engine being wheeled back to the hangar. Her technology, her vision was changing the industry in ways she'd never imagined possible. You know what still amazes me? She said. If they had just let me on that jet, none of this would have happened. I would have given my presentation, Aerodyne would have given theirs, and everyone would have moved on. GlobeTech might have eventually developed the technology, taking credit while keeping me in my cubicle. Thompson nodded. Their attempt to sideline you backfired spectacularly. It wasn't just about the jet, Amelia said. It was years of being overlooked, ideas attributed to others, opportunities denied. The jet was just the final straw. Her phone buzzed with an alert. The first commercial flight using their engine technology had just been certified for service. 3 months ahead of schedule. Life has a funny way of working out, Thompson said, reading the alert over her shoulder. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes. Amelia smiled. When they tried to keep me off that jet, they thought they were protecting themselves. Instead, they launched a revolution. From her office window, she could see the ocean stretching to the horizon, vast and full of possibilities, just like her future. The jet they'd tried to keep her off was now a footnote in her story.